In this workshop titled Danger Assessment, Understanding Risks in Abusive Relationships, you'll learn to identify risk factors associated with danger assessment analysis. Abusive relationships can escalate quickly, and we know that abuse generally escalates over time, but there are additional factors that warn us that relationships can become dangerous. Tune in to listen and become aware of the danger associated with escalating abuse and assess how many of the risk factors apply to your situation personally or that of someone you know. And as we move through the workshop, I'll share some potential next steps. I'm so glad you're here with us today. Welcome. I'm Annette Oltmans, founder and CEO of the MEND Project. And in this workshop titled Danger Assessment, Understanding Risks in Abusive Relationships, you'll gain a deeper understanding about the risk for danger in a relationship, whether it's a relationship you find yourself in, or you are a people helper or a loved one, or have a loved one in a relationship marked by abuse. You'll learn specific signs to look for and pay attention to that will help you know if there's a likelihood for escalation or introduction of violence. And I'll share a commonly used tool called the danger assessment. If you are here with us today and you have personally experienced any form of abuse by an intimate partner, you're not alone. According to the National Domestic Violence Hotline, intimate partner violence alone affects more than 12 million people every year. And 1 in 4 women and 1 in 7 men aged 18 and older in the US have been a victim of severe physical violence with an intimate partner in their lifetime. The statistics are really staggering. So if you or someone you know or someone you love is or has experienced any form of abuse, even if it wasn't physical, I want you to really hear what I just said. Many, too many, have their own stories of abuse in their life. And before I dive in today, I want to bring this heavier topic to you to carefully and graciously explain to you about danger assessment. I've taken a thorough danger assessment seminar, and I'm certified in danger assessment because it's so important to me that you know the risk factors for a potentially dangerous situation, particularly because some of the risk factors are things you'd probably never consider. So I want to communicate all that information in ways that allows you to stay here with us and listen so that you can add this to your toolbox without feeling overwhelmed. But if you feel triggered, it's okay to step off. Pay attention to your mind and body and stay regulated as best as you can because we care about you and we really want you to care well for yourself. I also want to gently communicate that it's important for you that you not be in denial. All abuse escalates over time. And whenever you change the dance in the relationship, like setting boundaries or presenting yourself stronger, or separate, abuse can escalate in ways that may blindside you. Abusers thrive on control and power, and there are numerous factors that will set an abuser off. And we know the cycle of abuse, where there will be abuse, then there's a honeymoon period and love bombing, and then it begins to escalate again. So we know that escalation will happen. The MEND Project normally addresses emotional abuse, but even in solely emotionally abusive relationships, things can really escalate. And so it's really important that you know that. So this topic is heavier than we usually take on, but I think it's a really important one. So I'll be sharing from a tool provided by www.dangerassessment.org. You'll find it in the chat in a moment. And it's a free tool that's widely used and trusted. The various risk assessment tests available are designed to not only predict violence, but to prevent violence by informing the victim of the inherent risks, their needs to implement a safety or escape plan, and to enlist the help of outsiders or community resources. And just so that you can anticipate what potentially could happen, and that you will be more attuned to recognizing those signs. The danger assessment tool I'm sharing with you today provides risk factors that may indicate a likelihood that the relationship could become dangerous or life-threatening to the victim who's being abused. And with that said, some of the same factors can indicate an escalation of emotional abuse and retaliation in a solely emotionally abusive relationship as well. So even if there's no signs of physical violence in your relationship, the danger assessment tool will help you see the likelihood of escalation. It'll give you these factors so that you'll have a better idea of what to expect. So there are many risk factors, including but not limited to substance abuse. And you might not think that would lead to an escalation. It doesn't cause abuse. That's a characterological issue. But substance abuse can escalate abuse and be a signifier of potential danger. Anger problems, things like raging or yelling or not having self-control, impulsivity, a history of violence, antisocial among peers and antisocial attitude in general, mental illness, a lack of social support, and so much more that we'll get into. Several risk factors have been associated with an increased risk of homicide of women and men in violent relationships, and we're going to talk through them in a moment as well. But first, I want to be clear that I cannot predict what will happen, and you can't predict what will happen, but you are better than anyone in your situation, in your relationship, to recognize when you are feeling fear, when you don't know what that person is capable of. And I want you to really become attuned to listening to your mind and your body. I can share with you the information I have regarding the risk of danger by walking through the danger assessment tool. And this tool specifically lays out the following behaviors on a scale of 1 to 5. A professional walking through a danger assessment will often encourage a victim to use a calendar to mark approximate dates over the lifetime of the relationship, to document what events took place that resulted in an escalation of hostility and when those events occurred. It's really important because to document these things for a number of reasons, but really to help you identify the patterns and the things that trigger your partner to escalate their abuse. Each incident will have an intensity scored. And while these scores may seem to address more severe forms of abuse, don't make the mistake of thinking that you can confidently assume your partner will not escalate to physical violence, even if they have never been physically violent in the past. Okay, so escalating violence and intensity levels are scored according to this scale. A score of 1 includes slapping, pushing, no injuries, and or no lasting pain. And I'm going to add blocking your access in or out of a room, breaking items in the house, or punching holes in the wall, etc. A score of 2 would be punching you, kicking, that resulted in bruises or cuts and or continuing pain. A score of 3 is when you feel like you were actually beat up or wrestled with. It could include contusions, burns, a broken bone, or even a miscarriage. And a score of 4, it's a threat to use a weapon, or a mere threat, or simply a display of a weapon is all it takes to tell you that you are in immediate danger. A score of 4 also includes a head injury, internal injury, permanent injury, and again, miscarriage. A score of 5, use of a weapon, wounds from a weapon. I'm going to add non-lethal strangulation or choking. Choking really isn't the proper term to use, as it can mean choking on food. So it's important to, like if you ever have been non-lethally strangled, by your spouse, it's a high risk factor of potential homicide. And it's important, if you make a police report, that they document strangulation and that you get an immediate an assessment by a forensic nurse at your local hospital. Okay. If your partner has ever put their hands around your neck, put you in a sleeper hold, or wrapped anything like a scarf, a necklace, belt, or rope around your neck, you have experienced strangulation. It's possible to show no outward symptoms of strangulation, sometimes until weeks or months later, to a lack of oxygen and other internal injuries in the neck. That's why it's so important to have a forensic nurse give you an examination where they scope your throat and can really tell, because sometimes there's the most random things that happen post strangulation that can result in serious injury or death, even weeks after it took place. According to the Training Institute on Strangulation Prevention, a woman who has suffered a non-fatal strangulation incident with her intimate partner is 750% more likely to be killed by the same perpetrator. So it's not something to take lightly. It's not something to minimize or say, oh, it wasn't that serious. It's something to really signify what they're capable of doing if they're willing to go that far. The higher number applies to the harm experienced. The other aspect of danger assessment tool walks through 20 yes or no questions, and I'd like to read through them with you now for you to hear. And if you'd like to get a sheet of paper and a pen, or open your notes on your phone and simply write down one and then put yes or no according to whether it's something you have experienced or have been threatened that you'll experience, you can see how you score on this test. So I'm going to pause for a moment for you to get ready. And if you are a responder walking alongside somebody who's experiencing any form of abuse, or where abuse seems to be escalating related to a particular incident, such as a separation, for example, feel free to do the same based on what you know about them, as it could inform you how to view their situation. Okay. Number one, yes or no. Has the emotional or physical violence increased in severity or frequency over the past year? Number two, do they own a gun? Number three, have you left after living together during the past year? If you have never left, note that by placing a check next to your answer. Number four, are they unemployed? Now, isn't that interesting? You wouldn't think that that question would be an indicator of potential violence, but there's been numerous studies to develop these assessment tools, and that was something that surprised me. Number five, have they ever used a weapon against you or threatened you with lethal weapon or displayed a weapon? If you answer yes, was the weapon a gun? If it was a gun, place a check next to your answer. Number six, do they threaten to kill you in covert or overt ways? So they may not come out and say, I'm going to kill you, but they might say something like, you're going to be really sorry if things like that. And you don't know exactly what they mean, but they're instilling fear. Number seven, have they avoided being arrested for domestic violence? Number eight, do you have a child that's not theirs? Yes or no? Number nine, have they ever forced you to have sex when you did not want to? Number 10, have they ever tried to choke you? Number 11, do they use illegal drugs? By drugs, I mean uppers or amphetamines, speed, angel dust, cocaine, crack, street drugs, or mixtures. And there's numerous drugs that I'm not going to mention all of them, but you get what I mean. And number 12, are they an alcoholic or a problem drinker? Number 13, do they control most or all of your daily activities? For instance, do they tell you who you could be friends with, when you can see your family, how much money you can use, or when you can take the car? If they have tried, but you do not allow them, place a check next to your answer. Number 14, are they violently and constantly jealous of you? Do they lose their temper over jealousy? Do they falsely accuse you of infidelity? Is jealousy a problem? For instance, do they say things like, if I can't have you, no one can? Or, just accusing you of cheating and really focused on where you can see their jealousy acting out. Number 15, have you ever been beaten while you were pregnant? If you have never been pregnant by him, place a check next to your answer. 16, have they ever threatened you with suicide or tried to commit suicide themselves? Number 17, do they threaten to harm your children? Number 18, do you believe they are capable of killing you? Number 19, do they follow or spy on you, leave threatening notes or messages on voicemails or texts? Do they destroy your property or call you when you don't want to be phoned, such as at work or when you're with family or friends? Number 10, have you ever threatened or tried to commit suicide? You can bring this tool. Wait a minute. Why did it say number? Oh, that was number 20. I'm sorry, I said number 10. You can bring this tool to an advocate or a therapist who will help you understand the assessment's meaning as it applies to your relational situation. But to score it yourself, add the total number of yes responses for questions 1 through 20. Add 4 points to each yes to questions 2 and 3. So I'm going to say this again so it's not confusing. Add 4 points to each yes to questions 2 and 3. Okay, add 3 points for a yes to question 4. Add 2 points for a yes to questions 5, 6, and 7. And add 1 point for each yes to questions 8 and 9. Subtract 3 points if question 3 is checked. Okay, so if you total up the score, based on the total that you got for the weighted score, your danger assessment falls into one of the following categories. I'm going to read through this slowly so that you can get it. Less than a score of 8 means variable danger. Be sure to note that the level can change quickly, so watch for other signs of danger and trust your intuition. Don't gaslight yourself and tell you it's not that bad. Really pay attention to the things that they're saying and doing during an escalated period of violence, whether it's emotional or physical. A score of 8 to 13 equals increased danger. In this situation, there's a high risk. So seek out assertive safety planning with a trained advocate who can help you come up with an exit plan safely. Present danger assessment results in court and know that typically a high level of supervision is recommended for this score. So an advocate can help you with an exit plan. Doesn't mean that you have to implement your exit plan right then, although it would be much safer if you did so because you are in a higher risk. but to have a safety plan in place is really important. It'll just prepare you and put you in a much stronger position if you decide to leave. And they'll be able to help you find someone to present the danger assessment results in court. So that's important too. All right, a score of 14 through 17 means severe danger. The risk is very high. So again, seek out assertive safety planning with a trained advocate who can help you come up with an exit plan safely. And know that typically a high level of supervision in custody changes or visitation with children is really recommended for this score. Present these findings in court. Number 4, if your score is 18 or more, it equals extreme danger. So please hear me. You are considered at serious risk for extreme danger. Take assertive action with a highly trained professional. Make calls for criminal justice or professional help. And say you want the highest bail, the highest sentencing, and the highest probation supervision. You will be assigned an advocate in court, and that is the person to communicate with. And that person can also get you a meeting with the DA's office where you can express your desire to have the highest bail, the highest sentencing, and the highest probation supervision, because a danger assessment score that is 18 or above requires that kind of supervision. So, prepare yourself. And we'll get a little bit more into that. Before I share more information regarding the assessment, I want to make it abundantly clear. Abuse is a choice. It's the abuser's choice. It is never the victim's fault. It's not your fault. And you do not owe an abusive person anything. You have every right to seek out remedies and safety and to place boundaries and limits on their access to you. It's of the utmost importance that you take these signs seriously, listen to yourself, and begin to get yourself free from an abusive relationship. If you feel guilt or empathy towards the abuser in spite of the above mentioned signs, don't beat yourself up. It's not uncommon. With that said, it demonstrates a cognitive dissonance on your part, or said another way, a disconnection from what is actually taking place. So you are, by being empathetic and feeling a sense of guilt with somebody who is dangerous, it's a telltale sign that you are disconnected from what is actually happening. You're not looking at it clearly. You are distorting your thinking, which is so easy to happen to victims of abuse who have been criticized, beaten down, and just undermined for so long, because you lose a sense of confidence, you doubt yourself, you doubt your objectivity. And so it's very common to feel guilty or to feel empathy, but that would be displaced. That's not a healthy emotion to have regarding somebody who's abusive. It's better that you focus on setting boundaries and extricating yourself from the situation. With that said, victims in abusive relationships are often exhausted, worn down, or have a lower sense of self-worth. It's not your fault you feel this way, but it is, however, important to recognize that your views are a distortion of reality, so you can work on gaining more accurate insight. Maybe a therapist can help you with that, or participating in classes and so forth, reading books. We have a great course, and domestic violence agencies also often have courses that you can take. If you've experienced any of the above 20 questions, please consult with a domestic violence agency, advocate, or highly trained therapist to help you properly assess your specific situation and help you with your attitudes towards the abuser. The abusers they abuse because of deeply rooted faulty beliefs and wrong attitudes about how relationships should function. But victims have faulty beliefs too, where we believe less of ourselves, believe that maybe we're unlovable or that we don't know how to communicate effectively. We have these internal messages that we send ourselves that tend to blame us or feel like this is what we deserve or we can't do better. We don't deserve better. And that's all a distortion of reality. So this test that I've just read through is intended to be evaluated by somebody who has taken the training and is certified to analyze and interpret the results. And this training does not replace that. It's meant, this training today does not replace that. It's meant to alert you to indicators you may never have thought of. Other aspects of risk assessment take into account the victim's knowledge, attitudes, and beliefs. Considering the victim's attitudes and behaviors reveals another component to determining risks. I find that really interesting. This factor reflects problems related to the victim that may interfere with her ability, opportunity, or motivation to take self-protective action. So that's a wake-up call. So number one, the victim's fears for her safety or has feelings of helplessness, hopelessness that prevent her from reporting intimate partner violence to the police. Number two, the victim is ambivalent about the relationship. So for example, victim still loves perpetrator, victim wants to stay in a relationship with perpetrator, victim has culturally rooted beliefs that separation or divorce is wrong or shameful. These are all contributing factors. Number three, victim tries to let the perpetrator down easily. So victim agrees to meet with the perpetrator after a separation or replies to unwanted emails or texts. And these things are not advisable. It's better to go no contact for the significant amount of months at least to get past that escalation period. Okay, so the next one, number four, victim's response to intimate partner violence is inappropriate and may interfere with self-protection. For example, victim violates the no contact order placed on the perpetrator, or victim is violent towards the perpetrator, or victim does not change lifestyle due to pride or principle. So it's really just another demonstration of denial, of not understanding the risks, not honoring the law, and not allowing the perpetrator to experience the full extent of consequences. Consequences are a great thing for perpetrators to experience. Without consequences, there's no possibility for change. Okay, number five, the victim minimizes the danger posed or blames herself for perpetrator's violence. And number six, victims have attitudes that support or condone violence or that justify violence. Well, if I wouldn't have said this, then he wouldn't have got so angry. So it's not accurately looking that the perpetrator is fully and solely responsible for violence, that nothing you say or do can impact whether they're going to be violent or not. It's intrinsically, it comes from deeply rooted faulty beliefs within the perpetrator. So related terms and concepts include fear, ambivalence, learned helplessness, hopelessness, a sense of desperation, bidirectional violence, denial, self-blame, sending the perpetrator mixed messages, and attitudes allowing or condoning violence. Victims are often fearful as a result of the emotional or physical abuse that they've endured. And distress of this nature can increase a victim's feelings of vulnerability and helplessness and interfere with her ability, energy, and motivation to take self-protective actions. So victims will actually have, if they're in a fearful state, they have such a high level of hypervigilance and anticipatory fear of what trauma will come next. And so oftentimes they're frozen to do nothing. And that interferes with her ability and motivation to take protective actions. So that's something to just be aware of. Additionally, for various reasons, such as love, you love him, or you're not assertive, so unassertiveness, or sensitivity to the perpetrator's feelings, a victim might display inconsistent behavior towards the perpetrator. A victim may also possess social, religious, or cultural beliefs that create ambivalence about ending an abusive situation or prevent them from seeking help from the civil or criminal justice systems. So many churches say that you need to resolve any discord in a church setting and not in the courts, but that's not advisable for matters of abuse. The justice system may have failed you in the past, or police may have not intervened appropriately. Community resources may not have been available. And so victim may have been turned away from a shelter as well. And these things are factors in the victim's lack of ability to pursue legal recourse. In situations involving an imminent or recent separation, an ambiguous response by the victim is more likely to be subject to misinterpretation or cognitive distortion by the perpetrator. For example, she's sending me mixed messages. So now he is really vacillating and escalating in his emotions. He has weakened coping skills. He needs to have a clear boundary given to him. So it's not helpful to vacillate as a victim. Some victims might even attempt to cope with the situation by approaching the perpetrator to reason, plead with, or communicate. This also is sending mixed messages. And some victims may also minimize or deny that the abuser's behavior is wrong or dangerous and believe that relationship violence is somewhat normal or is at times justified because of what she said, didn't say, did, or didn't do. But there's no excuse for violence ever. And that includes emotional abuse. A victim's vulnerability factors. Okay, so a victim fears for her safety or feelings of helplessness or hopelessness prevents her from reporting intimate partner violence to the police. She's afraid of the abuser's response or how he may retaliate. She feels she will be escalating abuse. She feels she will be betraying her spouse. She fears she will be forced to bear the responsibility for how social services may impose restrictions to protect children, and the guilt that she may feel as a result of that. She feels afraid of the unknown consequences. And if that fear that I've just described results in a lack of reporting intimate partner violence to authorities, she is contributing to her risk factor. So as I wrap up, I want to encourage you to seriously consider what you gleaned about your own personal situation from today's workshop. You may not be in a violent situation, but just by reading the factors and understanding them, for example, you have a child in the home that is not your partner's. It doesn't seem like that would be an increased risk factor, but it is. So take that information and believe it, take it seriously. Because even if you are solely in an emotionally abusive relationship, emotional abuse can escalate. And when you set boundaries, it can escalate even more where you are retaliated against. And that can be a very disruptive experience in your life. And so you need to be prepared for that. You need to understand how it will likely manifest and really prepare yourself emotionally, financially, physically, and so forth. So please use this information to equip and empower you and not bring about fear. This is good information for you to have, to really think seriously about the realities of your situation. So now you have a realistic pulse on your relationship and can take action with somebody who is trained, who can help you. If you're in immediate danger, seek help right away, please. Please don't wait until the next conflict. Many have ended harmful and potentially dangerous relationships successfully and safely with the help of trained individuals, a domestic violence advocate, family members, a good therapist, and you can do that too. If you have any questions that come up after today, or if you're in need of any resources or additional wisdom, please feel free to reach out to me at Annette, ANNETTE, at themendproject.com. And also, if you need immediate help and do not know where to go, please contact the National Domestic Violence Hotline, because they have counselors and advocates who can speak with you right away, 24 hours a day, and they'll be able to help and guide you, and they can help you locate. They'll help you locate services in your area. You can also go to their website, www.thehotline.org, or you can call them at 1-800-799-SAFE, or said another way, 7233. Or you can text in all caps, BEGIN, BEGIN, to the number 88788. And I will go ahead and have that information in the chat for you. They can also direct you to services in your specific area, like I said. They really have a whole list of resources, and they're very compassionate and well-trained. So ultimately, listen to and trust your gut. When you feel intimidated or fearful, that still small voice inside of you is a gift, and it's there to keep you safe. If you feel fearful, fear is a gift. It's a signal that something is seriously wrong. I want you to trust that. And you can never be overly cautious in these types of relationships. Before taking any steps, it's critically important to first meet with someone who can help you with a safe exit plan. Don't be hasty unless you're running for your safety. The more prepared you are in advance, the better off you'll be in the long run. There's safety consider first and foremost. There's finances. So it's about gathering documents and identifications, credit cards, phone, computer. There's a list that they can help you with. Housing and so forth. There's a lot to consider. So a well thought out safety plan that's discussed with an advocate will address all of these issues. So you can process them through somebody and they can give you advice, which is really helpful. And finally, if your relationship has never included physical violence, it's imperative that you understand that that does not mean that your relationship won't escalate into violence when you make a move to leave, set boundaries, or confront the abuser. Now, it depends on the makeup of your abuser. Do they rage? We talked about anger problems. Do they threaten? There's so many different factors to consider. Other abusers are not likely to be violent because they're more avoidant. They punish you with the silent treatment and don't want contact with you. That would be less of a risk factor. So the danger assessment really is something to pay attention to the details. And I've stated before that all abuse escalates over time. Abusers have poor coping skills and are extremely threatened when they feel they are losing power and control. They aim to regain that power and control and will act impulsively. Even if risk of future homicide does not align with your score, you need to know that all abusers retaliate. Be realistic and objective about your circumstances rather than in denial. Do not succumb to their tactics to regain power or to re-enter the relationship without long-standing evidence of measurable change from working with an abuse expert therapist or an abuse program. If you already have a restraining order because your abuser is sending you harassing texts or is stalking you, be aware that they will often change course and pretend to be sincere and kind. And sometimes that sincerity and kindness really pulls at your heartstrings, because after all, you loved that person and you wanted nothing more than for them to love you back. But when you return to them or drop the restraining order, they ramp up again, revealing their true motives to dominate you. And if you don't succumb to their kindness and their showering you with attention or love messages, then they're immediately going to flip to anger. So you're going to see their true colors, because when that doesn't work, then they go to trying to control you again, because that's really your ultimate motive. So my point in mentioning these latter points is that even if your relationship isn't physically violent, you need to grasp that every form of abuse will escalate and include retaliation. If you plan to file for divorce, for example, you can be assured that your abuser will not be cooperative in mediation or court proceedings. Expect the worst, even if you say, I know he would never hurt me and the kids. I've seen this too many times. Expect the worst and be prepared for that. You will also need to be prepared for additional trauma and stress, because it is stressful to go through a divorce or a separation. But the more prepared you are and the more you know that that stress is coming, the more you can tolerate it. And at least it's stress that you can understand the cause, unlike that confusing stress that you feel when you're trapped in an emotionally abusive relationship. When a victim leaves for good or separates, it'll likely get worse before it gets better. It's a tough season to go through, and you may have a hard time accepting this on the front end, but if you aren't prepared for it, you will be blindsided, and your lack of preparation will render you more compromised or in a weaker position to address all that will be thrown at you on the back end. That's one reason a solid safety plan is relevant, even in emotionally abusive situations. You'll need to make copies of banking documents in secret, and have saved text messages and emails, photographs, recordings, birth certificates, passports, and so forth. There's so many other things, and that's why it's important to have a safety plan. So don't believe if your abuser said, I will always be fair and I will always take care of the kids financially. It's naive to trust a person who aims to dominate, confuse, or control you. It's irresponsible to blindly trust them, and you and your children will almost assuredly pay a heavy price later. Okay, at this time, I'll take your questions and comments, and we'll continue until we've addressed all of them.
Thank you, Annette. That was a really important, and I'm sure that time to listen to workshop. We have had a few people share a couple experiences, and we actually have a question here. Let me share these real quick, and then I want to get to the question. Okay, so one person wrote that they called a crisis service in Northern Alabama.
I'm sorry, Jill, I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Oh, goodness. Okay, hold on. Let me see if I move this. Is this better? I know my voice is not very strong today, but is this better?
I think my speaker is not giving me. Shoot, I don't know. Try again.
Okay, can you hear me if I raise my voice?
Yeah, I'm still having trouble, but just speak loudly, please.
Okay, sorry for everybody here if it sounds like I'm yelling. Okay, so this one says, I called a crisis services in Northern Alabama, and no one helped me because it was the holidays. He turned it on me. I had reactive abuse after a total breakdown. Meanwhile, he walked away scot-free. I just thought I'd share that with you, Annette, because I think so many times these experiences are common among others as well.
Yeah. And while reactive abuse is totally understandable, you are in a trauma response. It's so important that you start working on regulating yourself, because police and the courts don't recognize reactive abuse. They will see you as an abuser, equally responsible or more responsible, because you're all upset and emotional and traumatized. So you look like the unstable one, and he's calm, cool, and collected. So they tend to believe him over you. So I'm just cautioning you. I totally understand reactive abuse. I used to be reactive myself, but it does not serve you well. You really need to take time to work on that. And I'm sorry that when you called a crisis center, that they weren't available. That really shouldn't be a crisis center then if they're not open on the holidays. But the National Domestic Violence Hotline is there 24/7. So if this ever comes up again, I recommend that you call that number instead. And I'm just sorry that you had to go through that. It's so common that police or law enforcement personnel don't recognize the signs of trauma. So, I mean, for me, when I see the signs of trauma, I view that as evidentiary information. I don't just, they look at it more topically without that deeper knowledge. And so they just assume that you're mentally ill, or that you're hysterical, that you are, you don't have coping skills and you're always angry. They completely misinterpret the situation. So I'm really sorry you had to go through that.
Yes, yes. I wanted to share this from.
Can you talk louder?
Oh, thank you. Thank you for reminding me. Yes. So I wanted to share this comment with you just as an encouragement. It says, "Thank you very much for the information. I am a DVL to DCPP. I'll have to look that up. In New Jersey, and your webinars are a great resource for me to share with survivors."
Oh, I'm so glad. Thank you for saying that. We love it when we hear that people helpers and responders are sharing our information. That's why we focus so much on training responders and training faith-based individuals and therapists, because they have the ability to reach their entire audience of survivors and clients. So thank you.
Yes, and she did note that it's the Division of Child Protection.
Oh,
So,
wonderful.
yeah, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that with us. We do appreciate
Yeah,
it.
thank you.
I have a couple more here, Annette. And on this one, if you need clarity, let me know. I want to make sure I get this accurate. It says, "Thank you for the information. I run an organization in Michigan supporting parents and caregivers who are being abused by their minor and or adult child. I would like to get your thoughts on how a parent should navigate the abuse they are facing by a minor child when all of the systems parents contact for help respond with, 'This is a behavioral or parenting issue.' Parents are foreseeing their death, and after time, they have sadly perished." And
Oh, gosh.
yes, I did clarify, and they said that, yes, the parents have passed away.
Oh, my goodness. Um, to be honest, I don't know a lot about that. Um, in fact, I mean, I've heard obviously a lot about elder abuse, but not from a minor child. So that's really out of my purview. But now you're inspiring me to want to research that and understand it more. I'm just so sorry. It seems like they are um, not able to navigate that well. On one hand, you're wanting to be so compassionate to your child who has mental issues. And on the other hand, you have to set boundaries and protect yourself. And it's expensive to put your child in a treatment center, very expensive. And so nobody wants to see their child in juvenile hall. So I can understand there's probably a lot of mixed emotions, but sounds like there's not enough services for that. I'm really sorry. If you want to email me something that I can read about that, I would really appreciate it at Annette at themendproject.com. I'm sorry I couldn't be more help.
Yeah. These are sometimes really tough situations.
Yeah.
Yeah, we appreciate the work that you do as well.
Very much so.
Yeah.
It's heart-wrenching. I can't imagine.
Yes. Yes. Okay, I have a couple more here. The person that you just answered to is asking, can they contact you? And Annette can answer, but I know Annette is more than happy to connect personally with people. So Annette, that's regarding the situation we just spoke about.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Okay, the next question.
Yeah, I'd love to talk to you about that.
Yes, yes.
Maybe we can have a phone meeting.
Yes. Okay, so we have three more. We have a few more hopping in here.
Okay.
Okay, how long after escaping from an abusive relationship does the danger exist? I escaped 1 year ago, and I'm still living and hiding in the same city. My adult daughters still do not know where I live. I am now legally separated and will get the money from the house sale in July. I don't trust my girls not to tell their father. They don't believe me about the abuse because he was so covert. My assessment total was 21.
Oh my goodness. Well, they say that the first year is the critical period, but you obviously have to use your intuition to gauge the kinds of behaviors that your ex is employing still to this day. Is he stalking you? Is he tracking your device? I don't know all the ins and outs of that. But if things like that are still going on, then the risk still is present. And if your daughters don't understand the severity of your situation or don't believe you, you're doing the right thing to protect yourself and to stay in hiding. I would consider writing I'm assuming you have a restraining order. I hope you do. What I was just thinking was to write down all the ways that he's particularly physically abused you and or stalked you or tracked you or anything like that, threatened you, and present it to your kids. Maybe send it to them in the form of a letter. Maybe go have a danger assessment done by a professional. You can Google, we gave you in the chat, the danger assessment. They can refer you to somebody who is certified to give you that. And you can maybe provide something like that to your kids to help them understand the severity of the situation. But sometimes all of this just falls on deaf ears, and only you know best the situation that you're in. But I hope that you have a restraining order, and I would get a danger assessment since your score is so high, so that you can also present that to the judge. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of right offhand. I'm so sorry, though. Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Do whatever you can to protect yourself.
absolutely. Yeah.
And get cameras on your house if you don't have it. Even if you just rent a house, put cameras all around, inside and outside. Ring cameras are not that expensive. And that can really help to provide proof if your ex violates a restraining order or comes to your home and does anything, it'll be documented. And nowadays, I see so many cases that don't have video proof. I see that police don't press charges and that the courts don't do much. But if you have physical evidence, it is so much more influential in a court situation.
Oh, yes. We have, I'm going to go back up a little bit, Annette, here. Hopefully you can hear me. Sorry, I was talking low again. Somebody who's saying that they're experiencing fear. And this, I just want to address that. This topic can even incite fear. And these thoughts, when we are in a situation where we have to even consider that we might be at risk for danger, can feel so frightening. And so that is probably a common experience for a lot of the people who are here today. And I just want to say, with everything Annette is equipping you with, the resources and the proper support, you will get through this with advocates and people who are highly skilled and trained to keep you safe. So we really want to encourage that. So let me read.
Counter your fear. Oh, sorry, Jill. I didn't know you were still talking.
Oh, I was going to read what the situation was, but if you want to address fear real quick.
Oh, it's okay. I'll address it after that.
Okay, it says, I am experiencing fear after having an in-between situation. Emotional abuse by reckless driving with me in the car. After almost getting in an accident, he started blaming me and yelling at me while we were in the car. I have an appointment with a counselor.
Okay, well, that is obviously a very dangerous situation. Erratic driving when they're raging at you is something I get called about or emailed about pretty often. And what I usually advise is that when that's happening, even though you might feel afraid to do this, if you could just dial 911 so that they are actually recording what's going on in the car, or you could record it yourself. But on my phone, to get to the record button is harder than dialing 911. So that's why I say it will be recorded and they'll have that as evidence. And usually when you report them and they know that you called the police, it has two potential outcomes. One is it escalates their anger towards you, but so they are more deviant on one hand. And some do get more violent. I need to be honest. Some do get more violent, but I've seen in a lot of cases where the police are called, the perpetrator backs way off on their abusive behavior because they now know that what your boundary is and that you will call the police. So it keeps them in check. So you only each one of you knows your personal situation. But if you're feeling fear, I would listen to your gut. Fear is a sign. It's a gift that helps you discern what is happening. But you can overcome fear, not fully, but you can overcome a lot of that anticipatory fear of the unknown, where you just kind of feel terror. It's a sense of being terrorized, or you feel a sense of terror. You can overcome that by informing yourself, by really equipping yourself and informing yourself, having a safety plan, being as prepared as possible. Preparation empowers you. Preparation builds confidence and assuredness, and it will help to mitigate some of your fear. And I would really encourage you to do that, because there's nothing worse than living in that sense of terror and fear without anything to mitigate it or to calm it down.
Yes. We had a couple of thank yous here. Thank you so much for responding and for validation. Makes me feel so much better that you've confirmed how I felt. Thank you so much. This is so helpful. Another thank
you're so welcome.
So validating. Somebody did ask if there will be a recording, and yes, there will be a recording. You have registered by being here. And so if you've registered, you will receive an email of that
And Jill,
recording.
when do they get that email normally?
Typically by end of week. So by Friday, most likely. If you don't have it by Friday, sometimes there might be a technical issue, so it might arrive Monday, but usually by Friday.
Okay.
And then somebody wanted to share that they said, just an FYI, if you are in a car and you dial 911, make sure the phone is not connected to the car, because new cars today are synced with phones.
Oh, good point.
Very good point.
Very good point. I was thinking that he was driving, and so my phone wasn't connected to the car. But if he was driving my car, then you're right. Very good point.
Really good point. Somebody had noted earlier that victims' compensation programs cover cost of security devices regarding anyone who's interested in security devices.
Okay, who provides that?
It says victims' compensation programs, and I'm not very familiar with that, but maybe we can look into that even at Mend and provide that information with the recording if we can look into that.
Is there a resource that you can tell us about that will help them access the victims' compensation program?
Oh, they're going to send a link, but it's I don't know if it's acronym. It's the letters. It's all caps. V as in Victor, C as in community, C as in community, and O as in ostrich. So VCCO. And
thank you for that.
Yes, they will drop a link in the chat for everybody.
Thank you.
We have one more question here. I don't think I've missed any. I'm just making sure. Actually, I have two. Okay, so here I'm going to read this first one. It says, I am trying to understand the situation that I'm in. I experienced most of the signs of emotional abuse, and I've been diagnosed with PTSD from it. My biggest challenge right now is remembering that I'm in an unhealthy situation. It took me a while to become aware of the abuse, and now I am battling with accepting and not forgetting that what I am experiencing is emotional abuse, and not just a personal failure to cope with life.
Oh, yeah. So, and just your question, it breaks my heart to hear how you're phrasing this, because you're still feeling responsible and blaming yourself and minimizing the fact that abuse is his choice, and he is domineering and manipulating and trying to control you, even if it's covert and it's confusing. And so I recommend that you just spend a decent amount of time educating yourself. I don't know if you have joined our course. We have a self-paced course. It's our comprehensive curriculum. It will really jumpstart you on your healing journey. And so I really recommend that you take that. It's designed to be a 4-week class, but it's really only an hour of reading a week and a 1 to 2 hour session, recorded session with me. So it doesn't take a lot of time. You could bang it all out in a week if you wanted to. But it will really give you a lot of information because it's so important that you look at your situation more accurately. And so you're gaslighting yourself, basically minimizing the severity of what's happening. And you're probably trauma bonded to this person. And the thought of leaving is really difficult. But you need to, instead of focusing on his problems and talking down about yourself, I want you to start thinking that your goal is to strengthen yourself. Your goal is to believe in yourself, to love yourself, and to be able to set really firm boundaries with confidence. And now that might seem like an impossible task right now when you don't have a high sense of self-worth, but it should be a goal for you to attain that through either therapy. There's books out there. There's one called the Human Magnet Syndrome that I've recommended before, by Ross Rosenberg, that addresses that low sense of self-worth. He calls it self-love deficit disorder. Books on codependency, books, or coming to our website and really analyzing the data on our website to educate yourself. The more educated you are, the more empowered you will become, the more you will be countering the negative programming that you have. So abusers have faulty belief systems, but I said before, victims have faulty belief systems too. So believing that you're somehow responsible, or that you don't deserve better, or that you're not lovable, or any of those things, is a faulty belief system. You are valuable. You are worthy. You are bright. Anybody who figures out covert emotional abuse is bright. And so I want you to start thinking of yourself in an entirely different way, and believing that. And that takes work. And so if you have any questions about that, you can email me. But I really encourage you to embark on that journey. And a good starting point is to take our course if you haven't done so already, and listening to podcasts. One that I like in particular for building up self-esteem is Natalie Hoffman's Flying Free. She posts her podcast once a week, and I think it would be helpful for you. I'm just so sorry.
Yeah. I want to read one more, and I want to share with you, Annette, that the person who sent the link with the VCCO, they dropped it in the chat. And so anybody who would like to head there, this is for New Jersey, but every state has a program through the Attorney General's office. And so they wrote that it's victims of crime compensation. So for DV victims, there has to be a report attached to the claim, a police report attached to the claim.
Thank you so much for that.
Yes, absolutely. They dropped one for Michigan as well, but just know that whatever state you're in, you can just do a Google search.
Okay.
And if you have questions, feel free to email us and we'll get you this information. We've shared a lot here today, and sometimes it can be a lot to remember. So please reach out to us if you have any questions. Okay, one last comment I have here, Annette, that I will read. It says, thank you for the information. By the way, Annette, we've had a lot of thank yous, so I just want to communicate that.
Thank you for saying thank you.
Yeah, it's been really helpful for a lot of people. So
good.
Thank you for the information. I am 6 years divorced, and my body systems are still in recovery. I met with a domestic violence advocate after I left. I kept telling her I wasn't physically abused, and she stopped me after a few minutes and explained all the behaviors were physically abusive. I never believed it would escalate. All the behaviors that were physically abusive, excuse me. I never believed it would escalate. He assaulted the next 4 women, sending one by ambulance to the hospital and non-fatally strangling another. He was arrested 3 times for domestic violence and kept getting out. He eventually served less than a year in prison, but he wouldn't have gone to prison if not for the probation violation from drunk driving. The justice system in our area just slaps them on the hand. Sadly, when I first heard about his physical abuse against them, my first thought was, I wish they had just sat down like I did. That's when I realized just how bad it had been. I spent 30 years just sitting down to be safe.
Oh, goodness. Well, a couple things come to mind. You spent a long time in an abusive relationship, so it's going to take your body quite a while to overcome the trauma. And the more proactive you can be about trauma recovery, getting outdoors, joining an exercise class, at your level, connecting with people socially, an art class, anything creative can really help you mitigate your trauma symptoms. Therapy, but it really requires that you do all of those things. All the experts really recommend creativity, exercise, connecting with people, being outdoors in nature, just to name a few. And it's true that the justice system, where I think they should be prioritizing domestic violence because of how lethal it can become and how it's like an $8 billion a year problem in the United States. There's a lot to it. And I feel like they just view it as a domestic problem instead of a severe crime. And so it's really going to require a cultural shift for that to change. And so you're right. They don't do enough. They're given way too many chances. And then look at your ex and what he's done. I'm glad that he had to serve some time. Maybe that will help, but usually I don't think it does much. It doesn't address the underlying core beliefs that they have that drive their abusive actions and behaviors. So I'm just sorry that you went through that. And I wish you well. The best way to get well is to take really good care of yourself.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
That is all I see from the chat today.
Okay. Well, thank you everyone for being here today. I really appreciate it. I thank you for your questions and comments. It really helps to enrich our discussion, as you can see. Until next time, our next workshop, take really good care of yourself. And I really mean that. Bye-bye.